In the autumn of 1877, the villagers were confronted with a mystery whose echoes still appear, in muted words in the local history books. 4 brothers, Elias Roston, Jonah Roston, Matthew Roston, and Sullivan Roston, later known as the Roston Brothers, shared every moment of their existence with one another. They not only spoke the same sentence simultaneously, but they also broke their bread together, drank from the same gulp of water at the same time, and even their chests rose and fell in unison. The villagers called them the Cursed Sons. But this harmony was far from a mere habit. It was something that seemed entirely beyond human nature. Local church records, kept in locked cabinets for centuries and only revealed to researchers a few decades ago, confirmed that Reverend William Harding described the Roston brothers in multiple sermons as one soul imprisoned in 4 bodies. He repeatedly warned that these brothers seemed more the playthings of some other power than creations of God. The village women strictly forbade their children from approaching them. Farmers would immediately make the sign of the cross if they saw the brothers near the edge of the fields, and merchants, who usually welcomed any customer, would lock their doors from the inside at the sight of the 4. The source of this fear was not just their habits. It was a single incident that transformed suspicion into permanent dread. In September 1877, a 13-year-old girl named Marianne Caldwell suddenly disappeared. Her body was never found, but a few shepherds swore they had seen the Roston brothers walking into the forest at night. Their footsteps were not separate but moved in perfect rhythm, as if not 4, but one person was walking. A deep crimson stain was also seen on their hands. When local authorities attempted to investigate, the 4 brothers spoke in unison. "If you touch one, all must die." This record still exists in the county archives. Same words, same moment, recorded in 4 separate testimonies. Investigators abandoned their attempts to arrest them. And from that day forward, a new warning emerged in the village. At night, if 4 knocks were heard on a door simultaneously, everyone knew the Roston brothers had passed by. And if some unfortunate soul dared answer those knocks, the next morning, the door would be open. But the house would be empty forever. After Marianne went missing, a silence settled over the village, one born purely of fear. People locked their doors from the inside long before sunset. Church attendance dwindled to half, and farmers abandoned their fields, fleeing in panic. But at the Roston brothers' house, nothing seemed to change. Their windows remained lit deep into the night, and from inside, 4 voices spoke, simultaneously, uttered prayers that were heard neither in the church nor written in any sacred text. The local pastor, William Harding, wrote in his diary, "I approached their house many times." The 4 brothers repeated words together, but these words did not seem like prayers to God. They felt as if calling out to some other power entirely. For the villagers, these signs of dread were not enough. In November 1877, another incident shook them further. A family, Henry Fields, his wife Margaret, and their 2 children, suddenly vanished from their cottage. No doors were broken, no noise was heard. In the morning, only one thing remained: 4 clear footprints in the mud outside the house, moving perfectly in unison. The investigative report noted that the weight and pressure of the steps were identical, as if not 4 separate bodies, but a single presence had walked upon the earth. After this event, whispers of the 4 knocks spread through the village. People said that if at night 4 simultaneous knocks were heard on a door, one must never answer, for whoever did by morning would cease to exist. The village widow, Rebecca Hale, testified that one night she heard 4 knocks on her door. Summoning her courage, she did not open it, but instead peered from a window, clutching the church cross. She saw the Roston brothers standing, perfectly still, but their eyes glowed like red embers in the dark. Rebecca said, "They were not 4. There was only one shadow, appearing in the form of 4 bodies." This testimony is still recorded in the county archives today. Meanwhile, some local historians claimed that the Roston brothers' harmony was the result of an ancient curse or family malediction. Their ancestor had once been accused of seizing church land, and it is said that the priest of that time cursed the family. "God will give you separate bodies, but your soul shall remain one." By December 1877, the village was half empty. People abandoned their possessions and migrated to nearby towns. Those who remained spent every night awake in fear, praying that the 4 knocks would never reach their doors. But history's most terrifying moment arrived on the last day of the year. When the church bell rang at midnight, no one was responsible. No rope moved, but the bell tolled 4 times at even intervals. And in the morning, 4 chairs were placed at the church door. On each chair was a name carved: Elias, Jonah, Matthew, and Sullivan. After that, the Roston brothers were never seen again. Yet even today in local tales, one saying persists: if 4 knocks arrive at your door, one after the other, remember, you are not dealing with 4 men, but with a single united soul. The winter of 1877 had blanketed the village in a layer of ice and snow that would be remembered for years. Yet even more terrifying than the cold was the silent presence of the Roston brothers. When the church bell rang for Sunday service, villagers gathered inside, but despite locking their doors, everyone lived in fear that the Roston brothers were standing outside. Some claimed to have seen their breath rising in unison. Above the snow, 4 plumes of steam, yet moving as one. Pastor William Harding declared at the time, "These are not humans. They are the embodiment of sin. Whoever approaches them is engulfed, not in light but in darkness." But the terror was not limited to sermons or fear alone. After the first snowfall of winter, another incident shook the village to its core. A farmer, Thomas Graves, who had always spoken against the Roston brothers, went out one night to patrol his fields. The next morning his wife found him tied to a post. The truly horrifying detail: there were no footprints around him, except 4 rows, moving in perfect synchrony, approaching and then vanishing. Thomas spoke only one sentence, and then remained silent until his death. They stood before me, but it felt as if I was seeing only one person. Afterward, villagers began sprinkling salt outside their doors at night, hoping to create some kind of barrier, but it was said that the Roston brothers could not be stopped. Then one night on Christmas itself, the church bell rang without being touched. When people went outside, they saw the 4 brothers standing in a circle in the middle of the village, their eyes fixed on the sky. Snow covered their footprints, yet they did not move an inch. Some claimed that the brothers were chanting a Latin prayer together, while others swore they were merely breathing, and with each exhale, the church windows trembled. After that, for the first time in the village's history, dozens of families abandoned everything and fled overnight, and those who remained stayed only to warn others. If ever on a winter's night you hear 4 knocks at once, extinguish the lights, for if a light shines, they will stop. And if they stop, no one will be left alive to see the morning. At the beginning of 1878, the villagers thought the curse might finally be over. The Roston brothers had not been seen for weeks. The church bells rang peacefully and some families even dared to return. Yet this fragile calm did not last long. One January night, the village's renowned carpenter, Edgar Holmes, suddenly disappeared. In his workshop, all that remained was a wooden coffin, pressed with 4 distinct finger marks side by side. The impressions were such that it seemed not one hand pressing 4 times, but 4 hands pressing simultaneously. This incident sent shivers through the villagers' hearts once more. They realized the Roston brothers had not vanished. They were drawing closer. Pastor William Harding stood in the church and declared, "This is no ordinary blessing or curse. This is the result of a blood-bound vow. These brothers have pledged their souls to a dark power, and now they can never be separated from one another." Yet the most chilling revelation came that night, when Edgar Holmes's family reported that the coffin had been knocked on 4 times, before it was even buried. And when they opened the door, there was nothing outside except a long trail in the snow, as if the coffin itself had been dragged across the ground. Meanwhile, an elder of the village, Abigail Morton, revealed a hidden tale she swore she had seen in her youth, an ancient trial involving the first generation of the Roston family. In that trial, their ancestor had performed a forbidden ritual in the forest at night to protect his land. Afterward, he had declared, "My lineage shall never break. 4 or 100, all will be one." By now, the villagers understood that the Roston brothers were not merely siblings, they were living proof of an ancient curse. Fear reached its peak one March night, when a farmer testified that he had heard the 4 brothers singing at the edge of the forest, in a single voice, but it was not one voice. Each voice came from a different direction, yet together they created a single unified melody. The farmer returned home and told his wife, "I heard one voice. That was 4, or 4 voices. That were only one." After that night, a new rule was established in the village. If 4 knocks sounded at your door, never open it. Not even if someone inside was dying, or someone outside called for help. For it was said that the Roston brothers never forced anyone to come with them. They only took those who opened the door themselves. In the spring of 1878, as the snow melted and green shoots began to sprout in the fields, the villagers decided they could no longer remain silent. Pastor William Harding declared that the Roston brothers must be confined within the sacred grounds of the church, or the village would be forever surrendered to darkness. The church servants prepared the crosses, filled vessels with holy water, and readied the oldest church bell. William Harding said, "When the bell tolls, no dark force will come near. At that moment we must seize the brothers." That very night, as clouds blanketed the sky and an unnatural silence fell, the Roston brothers appeared in the village square. They moved in a circle, their footsteps perfectly synchronized, as if only a single shadow traversed the ground. Gathering their courage, the villagers surrounded them. Holy water was sprinkled, crosses were raised, and the bell was rung. But then something happened that froze everyone in place. The Roston brothers stopped. Their eyes lifted from the sky and locked on the pastor. Then in unison they spoke. "You cannot bind us, for to bind 4 bodies are needed, and we possess only 1 soul." With that, all 4 brothers held their breath simultaneously. The church bell fell silent on its own, the candles extinguished, and the entire square was swallowed by darkness. When the light returned, Pastor William Harding lay unconscious on the ground, words scorched across his chest. "One cannot bind what is whole." After that night, church services ceased. The villagers fled, leaving the church doors wide open. And Pastor William Harding, he regained consciousness the next day, but his voice was forever silenced. He could only signal with his hands the 4 knocks. By now, everyone in the village knew the Roston brothers could not be stopped by force. Whoever saw them either fell silent or vanished.
It was a summer afternoon in 1878, when all the village children gathered by the river to play. The older women were busy in the fields, and the men often ventured into the forest or nearby towns, so the only noise and life in the village came from the children's games. But that day the air felt strangely still, the river's water seemed unusually calm, and the birds' songs were strangely absent. Among the children, the bravest was 13-year-old Hannah Mason. She was her father's only daughter and had always been bolder than the rest. She told everyone they shouldn't come just to play. They had to try, to uncover the secret that everyone in the village feared to speak of. The secret of the Roston brothers. "If the grown-ups won't tell us, maybe we have to see for ourselves," Hannah said. Some of the children trembled at her words, but 5 stood with her: her cousin Edward, shy Thomas, talkative Rebecca, and the twin brothers Sam and Luke. They decided to sneak near the church that night. It was the same church where, the previous month, Pastor William Harding had been marked, and whose doors had remained wide open ever since. When darkness fell and villagers huddled inside their homes, the 6 children crept toward the church. The air there was like a graveyard. The rusted latches on the doors rattled in the faint wind. Candle stains still marked the stone walls, blackened and worn. "This is where it happened," Hannah whispered. "This is where the Roston brothers showed everyone that they are not human." The children peered inside. Silence, broken pews, dust-covered books, and the empty chair near the altar where the pastor once sat. But the strangest thing was the wooden floor, which bore 4 burned circles, as if someone had stood there long enough to scorch the earth itself. Edward whispered, shivering. "This is where they stood, all 4 together." At that moment, Thomas saw movement near the door. A line of mist slowly crept toward the church. The children huddled behind the pews. The mist entered, and the air pressure shifted. The old church bell rang on its own. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Then came the knocks on the door, 4 knocks all at once. Their hearts leapt into their throats. Hannah signaled them to remain silent. The door slowly opened, and the Roston brothers entered. Their footsteps were identical, as if a single presence walked across the floor. Their clothes were plain, but an eerie calm rested on each of their faces, a calm no human could possess. They moved to the altar and formed a circle, speaking in unison. "One missing. The rest remain." Hannah held her breath. She remembered Marianne Caldwell, who had disappeared the previous year and never returned. Were they speaking of her, or was this another victim? The children watched in fear as the Roston brothers placed their hands on the floor. As their fingers touched the wood, fiery lines appeared within the circles. It was as if something alive beneath the ground was trying to escape. "What is that?" Rebecca whispered, trembling. Luke covered his ears. "They'll hear us." As he said this, the Roston brothers suddenly turned their heads toward the pews. Their eyes glowed simultaneously. Hannah felt as if it wasn't 4 sets of eyes, but one pair, fixed on all of them. "Who is there?" they said in unison. Their voices echoed off the church walls. The children froze, but a muffled scream escaped Thomas's lips. Then the Roston brothers rose at the same moment and surged toward the pews so swiftly it felt like a storm of wind had swept through. Hannah grabbed everyone's hands and screamed, "Run!" They bolted out through the back door into the darkness. The footsteps behind them sounded exactly like their own, but not four separate steps, one single presence chasing them all. When they reached the river, Hannah told everyone to jump in. The children swam to the other side. When they looked back, the Roston brothers were standing at the riverbank, watching, but they did not enter the water. Then in unison they spoke, "You have seen, now you are part of it." Shivering, the children ran home. None dared tell their parents the truth, but from that night on, they all had the same dream. Each night they stood in the center of a great circle, and four shadows moved around them. Hannah repeatedly heard the same phrase in her dreams. When the secret of four is revealed, the fifth will complete it. From that day, the six children began to distance themselves from the others. They no longer played in the fields, nor laughed along the riverbanks. In their eyes, along with fear, glimmered a strange, hidden knowledge. Months later, villagers noticed that the six children's shadows sometimes merged, as if their very breaths had begun to synchronize. And the elders whispered among themselves, "Perhaps the Roston brothers have found their heir."
By the end of 1878, the villagers began to notice that the six children, who had changed after the church incident, had become even quieter and more mysterious. At first, everyone assumed they were keeping to themselves out of fear, but gradually signs emerged that brought a new wave of terror to the village. Among the six, the greatest change was visible in 13-year-old Hannah Mason. Her once bright and lively eyes now often stared into some other, unseen direction. She would suddenly fall silent in the middle of speaking, as if listening to a voice no one else could hear. One night, Edward told his mother that Hannah sleepwalked. She would rise in the middle of the night, open the door, and walk outside. According to Edward, she would stand in the middle of the field, looking at the sky, repeating a single phrase over and over. The secret of four is revealed. The fifth will complete it. At first, his mother dismissed it as a child's imagination, but within days, similar reports came from other households. Hannah was seen at the cemetery by the riverbank. Astonishingly, wherever she went, she returned home safely by morning, remembering nothing of her journey. One day, Rebecca noticed strange marks on Hannah's hands, 4 thin parallel lines, as if seared by a hot rod, yet Hannah claimed they caused her no pain. When the village elders learned of this, they whispered in trembling voices. These were the same marks that once appeared on the Roston brothers' hands. The same curse is now descending upon this child. Hannah's transformation did not stop there. Her voice began to carry an uncanny resonance. When she spoke a sentence, it seemed as though multiple voices echoed behind her. One day, near the abandoned church doors, she stopped her classmates and said, "If you see one, you will see all." These were the exact words the Roston brothers had once spoken before the authorities. Fear spread through the village. Parents forbade their children from approaching Hannah, yet her 5 companions, Edward, Thomas, Rebecca, and the twin brothers Sam and Luke, remained with her. All of them had at some point seen the same vision in their dreams, a circle, Hannah standing in its center, with the Roston brothers moving around her. One stormy night, the 6 children once again felt compelled to walk toward the church. No one knew why. They seemed drawn by an unseen force. Upon entering, the bell rang by itself, once, twice, 3, 4 times. Suddenly, glowing circles appeared on the floor, the same 4 that had once burned into the wood by the Roston brothers' footsteps. But this time a 5th circle appeared, and Hannah stood at its center. Edward whispered, terrified, "This circle, it was never here before." Hannah slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were completely black. In unison, she spoke in 4 voices at once. "Now we are complete." Shadows began to dance along the church walls. Whispers echoed through the air. The remaining 5 children froze, their bodies unable to move. Then the Roston brothers themselves appeared. This time they did not take the form of 4 separate bodies. Instead, they appeared as a misty, shifting figure, as if their souls were seeking a new corporeal form. They stopped before Hannah and spoke in unison. "This is our heir. This is the 5th. The church bell rang continuously, yet no one came outside. The entire village was engulfed in darkness. That night, the shadow of the Roston brothers merged with Hannah's being. By morning, the children returned home, with no memory of the night's events. Only Hannah's eyes carried a strange, permanent light, not light, but a darkness that shone brighter than any light. From that day on, the villagers knew the truth. The Roston brothers were not gone. They were only seeking a new body, and that body was now Hannah Mason. Raindrops fell in the night like the sky itself was bleeding. The Roston brothers, Ezra, Jonah, Caleb, and Michael, stood before the shattered doors of the church. Their eyes glowed red, not with blood, but with a fire from some otherworldly realm. The villagers gathered at a distance, too terrified to move forward. Inside the church, the bell rang on its own, though no one touched it. "The time has come," they said in unison. Their voices echoed so powerfully it felt as if the walls of the church were trembling. The moment they stepped inside, the air shifted. A cold so sharp it cut through every soul filled the room. Candles ignited on their own. Pages of the Bible turned by themselves, as if an invisible hand was flipping them. An old woman among the villagers screamed, "This is the curse! This is the end we have feared for years." Ezra approached the pulpit and placed his hand on it. Cracks spread across the wood and black mist began to rise. Jonah inhaled the mist deeply. Caleb seized the cross in his fist and broke it, while Michael threw the pieces to the ground. Each of their actions flowed into the next, as if they were not four bodies but a single spirit. Shadows of past sins began to emerge along the walls. Murder, betrayal, adultery. Every act the villagers had tried to hide now manifest before their eyes. Screams filled the church. Some tried to flee, but every exit was blocked. The church doors had locked from the outside and the windows were frozen tight. Ezra spoke. "You called us cursed, but the real curse was in your sins. We are merely a mirror, reflecting what you cannot hide." Breath came heavy. Every person saw their own guilt, their own hidden crimes. A farmer saw his hands covered in blood, though they were empty. A woman saw before her eyes the newborn child she had cast into the river years ago. The church had become a court of judgment. The four brothers raised their hands in unison. A crack tore through the ceiling and lightning struck the pulpit. The mist now took human form, the very figures, born from the villagers' hidden crimes. The dead, boys, girls, women stood before them, faces silently asking, "When will justice come?" The village priest summoned his courage. "This is devilry! In God's name, stop!" But his tongue faltered, for behind him stood his own crime, a girl he had buried in the church years ago to keep the secret hidden. Now she stood before him in a bloodied dress. He fell to the floor, weeping. Ezra said, "You deceived God yourself. Now we are his witnesses." The villagers screamed, but no sound could save them. The walls of the church closed in. The mist enveloped every person. Their screams reached the sky, but only silence replied. When it was over, the church stood in complete silence. Candles were extinguished. The door swung open, but not a single living soul remained inside. Only the Roston brothers stood, their eyes now void of light, filled with a deep, impenetrable blackness. They looked at each other and smiled. Justice is complete. They stepped out of the church. The rain had stopped. The sky was clearing, but the village was deserted. Not a soul remained. Even the birds were silent. The four brothers walked in the same direction, neither right nor left. Behind them, faint lines appeared in the water. No one knew where they were going. But one thing was certain. Wherever they arrived, the sins of humanity would be waiting for them. The church bell rang one last time, and then it fell silent forever.